Hey everybody, it's Professor Norwood, and I just wanted to quickly go over some material that I think may help you as you're revising your instructor chosen essays. Draft number two of that essay is going to be due Wednesday of next week. So if you're still working on it, you have a little bit more time just to get some revisions in. And I can revisit this material Monday as well if we have a Zoom meeting. But today, I just wanted to talk about paragraphing as you all are going through the revision process. All right. So throughout your piece of writing, your paragraphs relate to one another and reflect the controlling purpose. And that's pretty much saying that, whatever is in your paper, it should serve the larger purpose. And the larger purpose for our papers is, showing an obstacle that we went through and then, relating to our audience what we learned from it. So make sure that everything in your essay speaks to that idea. If you have a paragraph in there that really doesn't connect, and I've even pointed it out on some of you guys' essays, just make sure you do your best to try to eliminate paragraphs that don't belong, or even sentences from paragraphs that don't belong. So try visualizing your essay, then arrange your thoughts into different segments. All right. And I know many of you in the past have heard that a paragraph should be 5 to 7 sentences, 3 to 5, 7 to 10, whatever. And, all of that is right and all of that's wrong, if that makes any sense. And what I'm saying is when you're putting your paragraphs together, don't aim, for a specific amount of sentences. Can a paragraph be too long? Yes. Can a paragraph be too short? Absolutely. But I think if we focus on the characteristics of our paragraphs instead of, a predetermined sentence count, I think that'll help us create more effective paragraphs. So instead of thinking of like a predetermined, amount of sentences for your essay, think of paragraphs as unified, coherent, and adequately developed. And I'll go through what each one of those are in a second here. All right. So firstly, paragraph unity. All right. And paragraph unity means that each paragraph only discusses one idea. All right. Or one key idea. So when you're putting your paragraphs together, or when you're putting your essay together, start a new paragraph, when you discuss something different. And I think for us, since we're writing personal narratives, start a new paragraph when there's a change in or the passage of time, or maybe there's a change in scenery. Like in one paragraph, you're discussing like ninth grade or this experience you had in ninth grade. When you're transitioning to a new grade, like 10th grade, start a new paragraph. All right. Also start a new paragraph when you want your audience to, just have a moment to breathe or reflect or, pause. But try not to have like giant paragraphs that take up, an entire page. All right. Or paragraphs where you discuss like multiple ideas. All right. So one of your tasks, for revising your paper is when you're going through your paragraphs, check for sentences that don't belong. All right. And it's not to say that it was a bad sentence or um yeah, not to say that it was a bad sentence. It just didn't belong in that paragraph that you're working on. So, maybe it can come later or earlier in your essay. But when you're going back over your paper, check for sentences that don't belong in a given paragraph. All right. So a unified paragraph contains a topic sentence, one that states the main idea of your paragraph, and then relevant supporting details. The emphasis here is on relevant. All right. Again, try not to go off on tangents, in your essay, or having sentences in paragraphs that can distract your readers. All right. So again, when you're going back over your paragraphs, check to make sure that each one belongs. Check to make sure that each sentence belongs. All right. And then here's an example. All right. When using a calendar to budget time, it is important to think about how long certain activities will take. So this is our main idea. Right? So everything in this paragraph has to have some connection to this idea. A common mistake is to underestimate the amount of time needed to do something, even something simple. For example, when planning the time needed to get cash from the ATM, remember that there may be a line of people. Last week in line, I met a woman I went to high school with, so we chatted. It turns out she had two children. She has two children just the same age as mine. When estimating time for a more complex activity, such as reading a chapter in a textbook, block out more free time than the activity requires. Doing so will provide additional free time if the task does not take as long as projected. One should allow for interruptions because it is better to allow too much time than too little. All right. Now, on the surface, this may look like a good paragraph, but there are a couple sentences here that do not belong. All right. So we got our topic sentence here. We know it's about thinking about how long certain activities take when budgeting our time. So that's our guide for this paragraph. So a common mistake is to underestimate the time needed to do something. That checks out. And then the writer gives an example. All right. But when we get here to these two sentences, last week I met a woman in line I went to high school with, so we chatted. It turns out she has two children that's the same age as mine. All right, now that may or may not be interesting to you, but for this paragraph, these sentences do not fit, okay? And they shouldn't belong here, or they shouldn't be here because they will distract your readers. All right. And this is what I was referring to earlier when I said, try not to go off on tangents, when you're crafting a paragraph. So again, look back and see what sentences don't belong in a paragraph as you're doing your revisions. So when we get back to sentence number 6, things get back on track. When estimating time for a more complex activity, so and then it finishes that thought. So these two sentences don't belong, and this paragraph will be just fine without them. But if this writer is to keep them, they would distract their reader from the main idea. All right. So here's just a little, it would be a pop quiz if we were doing a face-to-face session, but again, it's the same principle. Football, and this is more of a narrative style essay. Football has always been important to me. When I was a kid, it kept me out of trouble. While other kids were getting into mischief, I was at practice. Football also helped me keep my grades up because my parents wouldn't let me play if I didn't have at least a B average. And when I got to high school, I had to keep a certain GPA to be eligible. On the field, I learned sportsmanship, discipline, and how to be a team player. I also played basketball growing up too, which was fun. The most important lesson I learned from football is bouncing back from losses. In life, we don't win every time. What we do when we lose makes all the difference. All right. So here, everything in this paragraph is about what football means to this student. All right. Except this sentence. All right. So again, this one does not belong. It's about a sport, true, right? It's about this person playing sports, true. But again, if we check it against our topic sentence, doesn't check out. Now, this could actually, if we remove this sentence from this paragraph, this could be the start of a new paragraph, right? So if we get rid of number 6 and just continue with 7 and 8 in this paragraph, and then we can start a new paragraph at I also play basketball. And that paragraph will be about, the student's experiences with basketball. All right. So again, try to put yourself in your reader's shoes. All right. You know, just because something makes sense to us as writers, doesn't mean that it's going to make sense to our readers. So when you're, checking back over your paragraphs or you're revising your paragraphs, try to put yourself in your reader's shoes. All right. So again, unity paragraphs are just focused on one idea, and paragraphs that do not have, distracting sentences or, sentences that are disconnected from, the main idea of that paragraph. All right. So our second principle that we have, or second characteristic that we should think of when putting our paragraphs together is coherence. All right. Coherence just means flow. All right, meaning there's a strong connection between each idea in your or there between each sentence in your paragraph. Yeah, each sentence kind of flows into the next one when you're focusing on coherence. So coherent paragraphs flow smoothly from one sentence to another, clarifying relationships among ideas, thus allowing readers to grasp connections. In short, the ideas in your paragraphs have a logical connection. Incoherent writing can be confusing and sometimes frustrating to readers. Incoherent reading is sometimes, you change direction too fast, or in a paragraph, or you just have sentences without their proper context. And that can cause some confusion among your reader. So check this paragraph out. It lacks coherence for several reasons. College can be difficult for first-year students. Some struggle to adjust. The classes are harder and longer. Choosing a major is confusing. Students have to pay for their own books. Students have to pay room and board. It can be very expensive. All of this should be taken into consideration before going to school. All right. Now, okay, this paragraph is okay from an informational standpoint. It tells the reader everything they need to know, but it also sounds just kind of choppy with the way the sentences are constructed. All right, so when you're revising, ask yourself, how can I make this paragraph flow a bit smoother, and how can I establish a stronger connection between the points that I'm making? All right, and let's look at a revised version of this sentence. College can be difficult for first-year student, and many of them struggle to adjust to a new environment and new responsibilities, right? So right off the top, we're adding more information, or we're adding more context to this paragraph. We're filling out certain details to help our reader understand. All right. In college, classes are harder and longer. Additionally, okay, additionally is just a transition. And transitions help you go from one point to the next. All right. When you're using a transition, just make sure you're using the right one. If you want to show like in addition, there are certain transitions that you use. All right, like furthermore and additionally. All right, and I provided a list of transitions as well. Common transitions. There's a lot more though. All right. Additionally, choosing a major can get confusing due to all of the interesting programs schools offer. Again, we're finishing that thought. We're providing context for our readers. All right. Furthermore, another transition, the cost of attending school can be overwhelming. Aside from paying for each class they take, students have to pay for their own books along with room and board. The entire process of getting classes and lodging can be very expensive. Students should consider all of the previously mentioned factors before going to college. So transitions, we've added. Transitional phrases, we've added. All right. Additional information in our sentences to add context, or to let our reader know that there's more here, right? So when we say choosing a major can get confusing, we're going to tell them why it's confusing. Okay. Instead of saying it can be very expensive, we're going to show our reader what it is, the entire process of getting classes and lodging. Right. So sometimes we have an ambiguous it in our paragraphs, or a they. All right. Make sure we're being specific about it and they and she and he and all of that. Make sure we let our reader know, who or what that refers to. All right. So coherence, here's a few more strategies for achieving coherence in a paragraph. One, the tried and true method is using conditions. Excuse me, transitions. And transitions are connective words and phrases that show the link between your ideas, meaning college tuition is steadily increasing. In fact, college is in danger of becoming cost prohibitive. All right. In fact, is a tradition just showing emphasis. All right. Or repeating keywords. All right. And repeating keywords, not to be confused with redundancy, where you're repeating the same idea throughout a paragraph. Repeating keywords, it just helps your paragraphs flow smoother. All right. So synonyms and rewording key ideas can help your reader navigate your ideas. Asia has been in bed with strep throat for a week. Her illness, that's the repetition. Her illness may force her to drop her biology class this semester. So instead of saying Asia has been in bed with strep throat for a week, it may force her to drop her biology class. Reinforce what you're saying. What is it? Her illness. Okay. Another, we can switch up our pronouns in a paragraph to help it flow smoother. Dean Witherspoon agreed to meet with students next week. He was interested in hearing their ideas about the new regulations. All right. So, switch up your pronouns, right? Dean Witherspoon agreed to meet with students. He was interested. All right. If we had another sentence, it would probably begin, the dean was going to take this course of action. All right. And then finally, parallelism. All right, and it's just repetition of grammatical form. During the summer, children typically enjoy playing outside, eating ice cream, and riding their bikes. So parallelism is with these verbs: playing, eating, riding. All right. So if we said children typically enjoy playing outside, eating ice cream, and to ride their bikes, that would disrupt our coherence because we aren't keeping parallel structure. So just keep the endings of your word in mind: playing, eating, riding. So if you have a sentence with that in it or with this construction in it, whatever you're using, just be consistent. And then, as I was saying before, here's just a list of transitions. All right. And like I said, there's a lot more transitions, but I just have a list of, some of the most common ones. So if you want to show addition, right? Besides, right? Also, to, make sure you're using the right to as well. Moreover, furthermore, likewise, similarly, right? Or comparison. In the same way, similarly, likewise, in contrast, and examples, so on and so forth. All right, and just, here's some sentence examples. So I must call a friend for a ride home, period. I lock my keys in my car. Okay, just use a conjunction here instead of, we'll switch it up. Okay, conjunctions are fine as well, though. I'm just gonna switch, a little fancy here with however. All right, I was going to call my friend for a ride home. However, I locked my phone and my keys in my car. All right. And same with this one. This semester, I am taking composition, math, and psychology. I have a job. I am very busy. All right. Again, transitions just help with the choppiness. This semester, I am taking composition, math, and psychology. In addition to my classes, I have a job. As a result, I am very busy. Okay. So practice using transitions. All right. But in the long run, or overall, practice using strategies for coherence in your next draft. All right. And then finally, development. Okay. And development is really, you're just answering the question: what does my reader need to know? And like I was saying before, a lot of us have grown up with just these ideas of how long a paragraph should be. We've learned different things: 50 to 60 words, 7 to 10 sentence, quarter of a page, half a page. And like I said, these markers are great, but I think if we focus on development, all of this, the word count and sentence structure, all that would take care of itself. All right. So a developed paragraph includes enough detail for your reader. All right. So if you're, discussing an idea, make sure, you flesh it out to the best of your ability. All right. And here's an example, right? The 1980s may be remembered as an era when millions of Americans became obsessed with fitness. For most people, this was the decade in which they continually thought about how their bodies function. A preoccupation with one's body was a sign of the time. It was very fashionable to talk about how important it is to be fit. Okay. Now, this paragraph, if we read it carefully, we'll see that every sentence kind of says the same thing. Okay. The 80s is a time when people became obsessed with fitness. For most people, this was the decade which they thought continually about how their bodies function. So we said the same thing in two sentences. A preoccupation on one's body was a sign of the time. Again, we said the same thing a third time. It was very fashionable to talk about how important it is to be fit. Again, said the same thing again. All right. So a developed paragraph is one that avoids, redundancy or repeating the same ideas. A developed paragraph is one that fleshes an idea out with detail. Okay. Show your reader with examples. All right. Or better yet, with you all's essays that you're working on now, show your essay with descriptive language. All right. And here's a revised version of that paragraph. The 1980s may be remembered as the era when millions of Americans became obsessed with fitness. So the main idea is the same. Ambitious young people took up aerobics and weightlifting as toned bodies became assets. Others took up running, cycling, swimming, or all three. Even people's eating habits were affected. Gone were the days of ordering huge meals at restaurants. Instead, diners ordered pasta with low-fat sauce, salads with light dressing. People also began ordering Perrier instead of white wine, and soft drinks were replaced with by fruit and vegetable juices. Even more frowned upon was having a piece of cake after dinner. The 1980s definitely set a trend in fitness that still carries on. All right, so each of these sentences serve to develop, this main point. All right. So in your essays, one, watch for paragraphs that are too short because that means that they're underdeveloped. But also, make sure your paragraphs are including enough detail. Okay, enough detail. And then here's just some things about your introduction and your conclusion. All right, your introduction, very important part of your essay because it sets the tone for the entire piece. All right. And I think if you're including just a good attention grabber to open with and just some background or some context or some build up, because you all are telling a story in your essay. So make sure you give your reader, you hook your reader in that first paragraph. And these are just some ways to begin, some ways to start your essay. Start with a quote, a short quote. Those always work great. Martin Luther King once said, and then go into your quote. And starting with quotes is great because then once you have the quote, you can reflect on the quote a little bit in your intro, and that'll help you build your intro. All right. You can start with your narrative. That's fine. It all started when I was in the ninth grade. That's cool. An interesting statement. That's up to you. You can pose a question, but try not to begin essays with, have you ever? All right, because one, you want to avoid second person point of view, you are, but at the same time, if you start off with have you ever, and your reader answers no, there's a good chance that they're gonna become disconnected from your essay. So try not to begin with have you ever. Same thing with cliched openings, right? All around the world people watch TV, or statements like that. Try to avoid those. Okay. And then finally, in your conclusion, you really just want to summarize or reiterate, some ideas that you've been addressing throughout your essay. What you don't want to do is introduce new material. Okay. So, these are fine strategies for ending. All right. And then that's it. So to review, just free yourself from thinking about paragraphs in terms of their length, a predetermined amount of sentences, predetermined amount of words. Instead, focus on unity, meaning like focus on one idea. They're coherent, clear to your reader, and then develop, fully fleshed out. But special function paragraphs can break the rules. Introduction paragraphs and conclusion paragraphs are special function paragraphs. And then when you get into more advanced writing, you may have short transitional paragraphs. But for us, unity, coherence, and development, that's going to be our mantra, as we're putting our paragraphs together. All right. And then I just wanted to say a few additional things about revision, and I'll go over this Monday when we're having a Zoom call. But when you're going back over your paragraph, or excuse me, your essay, check each paragraph. One, make sure each paragraph belongs in your essay, and then check each paragraph for unity, coherence, and development. Okay. And just a few things before I wrap up here. I've added a few more items to the week 5 module that you can go through. There's some material about comma usage. There's some material about run-on sentences and comma splices. And each one of these, aside from this one, is a short video, all right, or short YouTube video. And this one is just a website, all right. This is the material we just covered. Here's some material on revision that we'll probably go through Monday, during our Zoom meeting. And finally, here is the assignment folder for your draft number 2 for your instructor chosen essay. Make sure your next draft, is 4 pages or as close to 4 pages as you can get it. All right. And then once you click the assignment folder, there's this self-assessment that I want you all to complete and upload when you upload your paper. And the self-assessment, let me get mine open real quick. The self-assessment is just a series of questions, just really getting you to, have a stronger connection to your paper as we go through the revision process. All right, so there's some questions that you can type in your responses. And then here, these are just like yes, no questions. All right, so you can complete that and then get that uploaded into you can just put it in this same assignment folder. All right. So that's all I have for today, my good people. So make sure you review this material and have a great one. All right.